Assalamu alaikum everyone.
Walaikum salam.
Walaikum salam.
Welcome to this course. This is Leena Mahesh, and in this course we are going to learn Flutter and Dart from scratch. And no prior knowledge is required for this course. We will start with some basics and then we will move on to the advanced topics in upcoming classes. Am I audible to all of you? Please write in the chat.
Yes.
Okay. So we will start with some basic topics and then we will move on to the advanced topics in the upcoming classes, such as Flutter with AI, API integration, and some other topics as well, like bridging, platform channel native. So we will cover all these topics in this course. And also we don't require any prior knowledge, which means you don't need to learn Dart from or any other programming language for this course. And also we will cover all these things, and after at the end of this course you will be a professional Flutter developer and you can build your own applications. We will not just cover the theory, we will also cover some examples so that you can know how and where to apply certain things and much more. So we will divide this class into two sessions. First will be from 11 to 12, and then after 10 minutes of break we will start our another session. And at the end of the class you can ask me questions as well. And for the course outline, you have all must have seen the course outline as well, and you must be aware of what we are going to learn in further classes. So let me share my screen with you. Is it visible?
Yes.
Okay. First, so first start with this question: what is exactly Flutter? Flutter, as its name suggests, Flutter is a bird wing sound when it flies. So by the name, you can think like Flutter, as a bird can fly very fast. So you can think like Flutter will be very fast or efficient kind of thing. So Flutter, what exactly it is? It is a tool that allows you to build cross-platform applications with one programming language and code base. Here, the important term is cross-platform application. By cross-platform application, we mean iOS and Android both. Flutter supports both Android and iOS with one programming language. We use Dart as a programming language here, and we build with one programming language and code base. We don't have to write two different code for iOS and Android. We only have one project, and that builds application for both iOS and Android. The second thing is Flutter has two important things here. One is Flutter SDK, Software Development Kit, and the other is Framework Widget Library. So Flutter Software Development Kit is a collection of tools basically. It includes all the tools that need to compile your code into native machine code. What that mean is uh, without this Flutter SDK, you will never get two different applications. You will either get for Android or maybe for iOS, but you will never get two applications. So Flutter SDK, what it do is compiles your code for both iOS and Android. This is the important part here. And the second thing is Framework Widget Library. So Framework Widget Library is basically a library that allows you to build user interfaces, beautiful user interfaces, widgets, library. For example, widgets means here the buttons or text inputs or maybe drop down. We call it in Flutter widgets. All these UI building blocks, we call it Flutter widgets. So these widgets together make up a UI, full user interface, and you can build your user interface as per your own choice with these building blocks. So this helps you in building your application very easily and flexibly, and you can build with your application with these widgets. You don't need to write everything from scratch. This is the advantage of Flutter. And next we have Dart. As I mentioned earlier, we use programming language Dart for Flutter. Basically, Dart is a programming language and it is used for front-end designing. It is mostly used for front-end designing, front-end user interfaces, and front-end of mobile applications. It is developed by Google, and Flutter is also developed by Google. Flutter and Dart both are two different things, but it work as a team. And also, this is an object-oriented and strongly typed language. Object-oriented is a concept of object-oriented includes like classes, objects, polymorphism, all these concepts. We will learn in this course, throughout this course, what is object-oriented and how to make class, how to make different functions and all these things. And strongly typed language. Strongly typed languages, something like variables have different types like integer or string or boolean. So these types are not converted automatically into another type. Strongly typed means that if a variable is integer, it will remain integer until and unless we will not change into a string. I will give you an example of strongly typed as well. And the next thing is syntax mixture. Yeah. So so the Dart syntax is kind of a mixture of JavaScript, Java, or C Sharp. But you don't need to learn all these languages for that. We will learn in this course. Let me give you an example of strongly typed. For example, if we have, um, let's say we have 2 plus 3. If we have something like this, 2 plus 3, so this 2 is a string and 3 is an integer. It will give you an error at the runtime and compile time that it is not it cannot be happen. It cannot be addition cannot be applied to it because this is a string and this is an integer, and string cannot be added into the integer. So in JavaScript, what it happens at the output will be 23 if we are using JavaScript. And if we are using Perl programming language, then the output will be 5. But for Dart, the uh, output will not occur because of error, because this is the string and this is the integer. So this is mean by strongly typed. In JavaScript, it will consider both of the elements as a string. That's why it results in 23 as a string. And what happens in Perl is it will convert this string into integer, and it will add these two numbers. So this is mean by strongly typed. Next, we have Flutter versus Dart. So as I told you, Flutter and Dart are two different things. They are not same. Flutter is basically a framework and Dart is a programming language. Flutter uses Dart to build applications, and Flutter framework contains all the widgets and libraries, plugins, functions, method built in. to build these things, to build UI, to build functionality and all the stuff. And Flutter uses Dart to build all the objects, uh, all the stuff. Then the next thing we have is Flutter architecture. So Flutter architecture, here we have UI component is the main. Flutter architecture, in Flutter architecture we have UI as the main component, UI as code. Here UI as code means Flutter uses everything in code. For user interfaces we don't have drag and drop options. We have to write everything in code. We have to write every user interface, we have to write everything in a code, and we make a widget tree for UI. For user interfaces we make a widget tree basically. And for it might sound difficult at early stages, but it is not difficult. It is a good approach to use a widget tree and to make UI through it. The next thing we have is embrace platform differences. So as we said earlier that Flutter builds application for both Android and iOS, for both platforms. But if we need to change at any point, if we need to change any point, for example, if we want to change a button in iOS, we want to make a button look different in iOS, and we want to make a button look different in Android. So we can do this with only one code base. With the same project, we can do this. We can define the things that if it is Android, just make the button look blue, or button color look blue, or if it is iOS, just make the color look pink. But we don't usually do this. But in some cases, if it is required, we can change UI. So everything is a widget. We said earlier that Flutter UI component is a widget. Flutter contains everything as a widget. This is the most common phrase you might hear about the Flutter. This in this UI, you can see that there is a app bar at the top, and then we have this image, and then the text, some text, and then the color, and then last the button. So each and everything here is a widget. The app bar contain different widget, and inside of this we have other widget. This whole screen, basically whole page, is a widget, and whole page is wrapped into a single widget, into a single main widget, and every other main widget is divided into sub widgets. So this is the basically hierarchy we follow in Flutter, and this is followed by Dart programming language. Flutter do not use platform primitives. What that mean is Flutter develop application through Flutter we can develop application for iOS and Android, and also web applications. But if we, for example, if we want to make a button, we compile it, we make a raised button. In Flutter, we make a raised button. So it will, you might think about like maybe in compiling, Flutter will change into UI button or widget button, which is the iOS built-in buttons, or we can say the iOS native buttons. iOS native button is UI button, and Android native button is widget button. So you might think like in the compile time it might change iOS native buttons and Android native buttons, but this is not the case. Flutter Flutter basically directly controls every pixel on the screen. The raised button is converted into, it is not converted, it is not compiled into iOS or Android alternatives, or Android or iOS basically alternatives, or anything like that. It just controls every pixel, which means that it will look same in iOS and Android as we want to make it. Next thing is Flutter installation. We will install Flutter and with Android Studio. This is the Flutter documentation, official documentation. From here you can install the Flutter for whatever the operating system you are using. I'm using Windows. First, let's read the system requirements. It requires Windows 7 or later, 1.4 GB disk. The tools we require is Windows PowerShell, which is already built in Windows 10, and Git. Okay, so we can install the Git. Let's click here. The installation is simple. It's just we have no changes we need to do. And here's the Flutter SDK, which is very important. Without this, our application will not compile. I've already downloaded it. You can just click on this and it will start downloading. And extract this Flutter SDK into any of the location you want to. I've already extracted it. You can see that we have already extracted it. And here we have Flutter console.bat file. If we click on this, we can see it is successfully installed, and we can create our project with this command prompt or console as well, but we will create through the command prompt, the Windows command prompt. The next thing is you need to update your path variable. You need to update your path variable. So what a path variable means is the path variable is something that command prompt identifies. What we have to do is define our bin path, Flutter bin path into the path variable, so that we can find through the command prompt the where Flutter exists in our machine. So how do you update your path variable is by searching here control panel. Inside the control panel, user account, and in the user account again the user account, and here we have on the left side the last one, change my environment variable, and in the environment variable we have this path. We can click on the edit and we will create a new path, which I've already created. And you can see that Flutter Windows and Flutter bin. I've already set the path. And we have edited the path and hit OK. The path is added. Then if we run the cmd command prompt, if we write Flutter over here, let's wait for it. You can see there is no error. It says successfully. If there is an error, then it might be not installed properly, or we have not set the path variable, but it is installed properly and there is no error, which means it is working fine. Okay, we have first checked the system requirement, then we have downloaded this zip file, Flutter SDK, then we have updated our path variable. We have also downloaded the Git. The next thing is run Flutter Doctor. I'll I'll explain this you to later. We will first do Android Studio. We will install Android Studio. Android Studio is basically a development environment for Android applications, but we need some tools, and this for Flutter we generally use this for native Android applications for Java language or Kotlin, but we will require some tools for Flutter, so that's why we need to download this. uh, I've already downloaded this. Just you have to accept this. I have read and agree above the terms and condition, hit the download and will start downloading. I've already downloaded it, and the installation is simple. You just need to mm, press the next button. There's nothing complicated in that. We can open the Android Studio as well. I recommend you to follow up through this documentation because it might change in future, so you just need to follow this. This current version is 2.8.1. It might be 2.8.2 or 3 in future, so you should use this documentation or follow this documentation. So we have already the Android Studio. Okay, so what we can do is we can now run the Flutter Doctor. After downloading and installing Android Studio, we can run the Flutter Doctor. What Flutter Doctor do is it it helps us knowing that if everything is working fine or not. We have we have our Android Studio downloaded. It is tick marked. VS Code is also downloaded. Connected devices, everything is tick marked, which means everything is working fine. No issues found. One more thing is if you do not have Java home path, you need to add this. Mm, Java JDK is downloaded automatically with Android Studio. But if you do not find this path here in user variables, you need to include this path Java home, and this path. This is the built-in path program files and Java and JDK. And also, if you do not have this Android home path, you need to include this as well. This is also a built-in path that comes with Android Studio, but you need to cross-check everything. Then we have the Android emulator. So if you want to run applications on Android emulator, we can install the emulator as well. From here, in the tools we have AVD Manager, and here we can click on Create Virtual Device. We can choose any device we want to create. any API level we can choose. Android version, let's choose this Q. This will take a lot of time in downloading. Let's just skip for now. And we have tested everything. Installed Android Studio, emulator, agree to Android license. Yeah, this is very important. I've already did this, but what you can do is Flutter. Type here Flutter Doctor Android licenses. Yes, I've made a mistake. Let's just copy. You just need to type this command Flutter Android license, Doctor Android license. This will accept all the licenses, and after this, accepting all the licenses successfully, Android Windows setup, enable desktop data. That's it. That's all about the installation. We have successfully installed and Flutter with Android Studio. One thing you need to install is Visual Studio Code. I prefer Visual Studio Code, but you can also open up your application in this Android Studio and you can run the application through this. But I prefer Visual Studio Code. So you can download this Visual Studio Code as well from here. It will automatically download the suitable version for your machine. You can open the Visual Studio Code and let's create our first Flutter project. Let's open the command prompt here by typing cmd, and here we can create our first Flutter project by writing Flutter create and whatever the name we want to. For example, we make it first Flutter app. Now this name should not contain any white spaces and this should not be in capital letters. This should always be in small letters and this should not contain any dashed character. For example, if we want something like this, it will show us error. So we need to use underscore to separate words. This will, so we have created our first Flutter project successfully. We can open our application in this Visual Studio Code by just clicking on this open folder and then clicking on our folder and select folder. This is the first application. This all the code comes with when we create our first application. This is all we get, and let's just run this application what it looks like. We have currently Chrome and Edge. Let's connect my phone, or we can run this application on emulator as well. So since we don't have emulator right now, so you can see that my device is showing here. What we can do is I've installed one more application. to show up my device and how we can connect. I have connected my phone through data cable, the normal data cable. So what we can do is, after connecting your phone through data cable, go to the settings, and in the settings you will find about phone, and the about phone you will have a build number. You have to tap this build number 6 times. Since I'm already a developer, so you need to but click 6 times and then you will see a toast, you are a developer. And then we will open our developer options. This developer option is created when we tap build number 6 times. If you if you find difficulty in finding the developer options or build number, you can always search for it. Developer options, and in the developer options, and just check this USB debugging on. Let it connect. Yeah, you have to turn on this USB debugging options without switching on this. If it is switched off, you will not be able to run your application on real devices. So you need to on this first, and let's run our application now and see what it looks like. Let's wait for it. These are the commands: open command prompt, Flutter create, first project, Flutter doctor. We have used all these commands. It will take time when it's first uh, downloading the application into your phone, but after once downloaded, it will it will not take this much of time. You can always check on debug console what is running currently. It says installing. It is installed. Now this is the application we get when we first install application, when we first create our project. This is the built-in application we get and all the stuff. This is a simple application, and if we click this floating action button with the plus sign, the counter will increment, and we can change this counter. You can find this increment counter function increment, and inside this increment counter function, we have this counter variable. We can increment this counter, for example, something like counter plus 2. Let's just save this and see the results. Plus 5, 7, and 9. This is incrementing now with plus 2. If we change it something as plus 0, or we can say 0 only. Again, hot reloading. Say it quickly changes to 0. So now let's clear the concept of first hot reloading and hot restart. If whenever we change here anything, if we change to counter plus 2 and we with control S, by pressing control S on our keyboard, it says hot reload, hot reload completed. What it means by hot reload and what other things we have. So let's understand this. So here we have hot reload and hot restart. They are two different things. Hot reload means the whatever the changes we make in the code, it will automatically trigger to the application. If the application is connected, still connected, then it will automatically trigger the changes without reloading or restarting our application. Because when we first created our application, it took a lot of time to build our application. And if we again and again build the application, and if we have a huge application, then it will take a lot of time. So what we do in development process is we perform hot reloading to implement our things, to implement our code quickly in development. And it does not rebuild the widget tree. It preserves the app state, which means if we have increased the counter to 6, it will remain 6 until we hot restart it and make it 0 again. So hot restart is opposite to the hot reload. It directly changes, it builds the whole application again and again, and loses the state as well. As we can see in the code, we have first initialize our counter. We have first initialize our counter to 0, and it does not initialize every time because we are performing hot reloading. And if we perform hot restart, it will initialize every time our counter to 0. So the next thing we have the difference between Flutter versus React Native. So Flutter not only is the language or framework that allows us to build both cross-platform applications for iOS and Android and web applications. There are other frameworks, there are other alternatives that we can use. For example, React Native. So what is the difference between Flutter and React Native? What are the major differences that we choose Flutter and we should not choose React Native? So the major difference is Flutter Flutter uses Dart as a programming language, and React Native uses JavaScript as a programming language. Flutter has its own framework, and React Native also uses React.js as a programming language for building native mobile applications. And Flutter frameworks contain all the libraries and widgets to build beautiful applications. We don't need to worry about building buttons and from scratch or UI elements from scratch. It is all provided. In Flutter, we compile native apps, and in React Native, we partly compiled native apps. What that mean is Flutter compiles all the all the code, all the compile all our code into native elements. It does not compile into some alternative. What we have earlier understand the concept of Flutter primitives. This Flutter primitives concept that raise button is not converted into iOS built-in buttons or iOS UI buttons. It is Flutter supports controls every pixels on the screen. It redraws every pixels on the screen, so we have full control, full flexibility to change and customize our widgets. But with this React Native, what we have is it is partly compiled. It is not compiled into native apps. The JavaScript is enclosed in a native app. The JavaScript is enclosed in a native app, which means the iOS buttons are the iOS buttons are native buttons, not the React Native buttons. The native buttons, the iOS buttons will look like the iOS that iOS does have, but the Flutter will provide the full flexibility of how we want to customize it. It will show according to our choice. So this is the major difference between Flutter and React Native. Flutter is developed by Google and React Native is developed by Facebook. The other thing is Flutter is faster than React Native. Now, how we can say that Flutter is faster than React Native? Because Flutter Flutter performance is much better than React Native because Flutter is not enclosed in JavaScript or enclosed in any other language, Dart or any other languages. Flutter compiles directly to native apps. This is the big difference in Flutter and React Native, and therefore Flutter is much better than React Native. But React Native has its own advantages, like Flutter is not that much developed yet, but React Native is much more developed. It has much more support, but Flutter does not have that much support for now. But as we can see, the performance is much better than React Native, so we should choose Flutter for building mobile applications. Now there is another new concept in Flutter that is introduced after Flutter 2.0, which is the null safety concept. So Flutter null safety concept is something like we know that um, variables can be null or cannot be null in other programming languages. But if we talk about Flutter, variables cannot be null on runtime. Flutter detects the variables on compile time. If it is null, it will tell you on compile time that this variable is none, you cannot run this. What other languages this helps developer much more in productivity, because uh, a developer, if we have a like huge application and so many of variables, functions, methods, and if on the runtime application crashes due to null variables, due to null objects, so we will not be able to detect what is the cause or how to implement or how to uh, solve this issue of null. But if we know from the compile time that it is null, then we can perform action accordingly. So this is a very big advantage of Flutter, which is recently introduced. So in this session, what we have covered is what is Flutter. Let's revise from the start, from the very start. What we have covered is what is Flutter, and which programming language Flutter is based on, and what Flutter use as the backend tool to compile application and to build application into beautiful user interfaces. Lot Flutter uses. It uses different UI elements, blocks, widgets, and these things. And we know that Dart is a strongly typed and object oriented programming language which is developed by Google, and its syntax is kind of mixture of JavaScript and Java. And Flutter and Dart work together as a team. They are two different things. Flutter is based on Dart. Flutter builds upon Dart. And Flutter builds applications on Dart basically. And Flutter architecture includes UI as code, widgets, and widget tree. And we have platform differences. We know this, that there are iOS and Android, two different platforms, but we can still build UI elements on particular platforms. We can still change UI elements as per our own choice. And in Flutter, we call everything a widget. Every element is a widget in Flutter. Flutter do not use platform primitives. It does not convert our UI elements into some alternatives or some different objects that we were not expecting it to be. But whatever we created, whatever we um, make it, it will look exactly the same in both iOS and Android. We can control every pixel. This provides us a full customability to our applications and full control on our applications. We have looked through the installation part as well. We have installed Flutter SDK first, and then we have installed the Git as well, and Android Studio. We can also install the Android emulator as well, on which we can build our application. If we install the Android emulator, we still can build our application by pressing this play button over here. Or we can see here there are only three options right now. The first one is my phone, and the Chrome and the Edge. But if we connect the emulator will also be showing up on this list, in this list. So we can click on that list, click on the emulator, and we can hit the play button from here. We have created our first Flutter project through command prompt. We also know that Flutter, there is a Flutter console. We can create our projects through Flutter console as well, but we have preferred a command prompt. And we have,
How are you, Maro?
hello,
I'm good. How are you?
sorry,
I'm good, man. How's life?
Can you repeat that?
yeah, sure. Um, we have created a Flutter first project through command prompt. We also have looked onto console.bat file that Flutter has its own console. We can build applications through it as well. But we have choose command prompt for it, and we have downloaded the Git for it as well. And this is the command we use to create our application, Flutter create first app. And we have used Flutter Doctor to know if everything is working fine in our machine, or if there is any error in installing anything.
Miss?
Yes,
Miss, I'm failing the course and I think I should drop out of university.
sorry.
I'm failing the course and I think I should drop out of university. To be honest, I don't feel like going to university anymore. I just want to become a rapper, like Polo G or something.
I'll entertain your questions at the end of this class.
Okay, Miss, thank you. I was just letting you know how I feel.
Okay. So We have also covered this hot reloading and hot restart concepts as well. We have learned that hot reloading and hot restart is a different thing. We can change, we can update our code, and hot reloading is much faster than hot restart. We do not need to build our whole application from the very start. If we have few changes, we can build a few changes and save those changes as well. We have see the differences between Flutter versus React Native. The Flutter uses Dart language, React Native uses JavaScript. It is partly compiled and not compiled. We have learned that it is developed by Google, it is developed by Facebook. Both are both are competitors of each other. Please mute your mic. We have also seen the null safety support of Flutter and how it helps in productivity of developer. So now we will take a 10 minutes of break, and then we will come back after the break and we will continue our session.
Miss, I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
I don't understand the difference in the reactivity and the other one.
React Native and Flutter differences.
Yeah, that one.
I'll continue this in the next session.
Okay, Miss. Thank
Okay.
you.
Miss, I have one question as well.
Yeah, sure.
Ma'am, actually, you interface the Android phone with the Flutter app, right?
Yeah.
Can we interface the iPhone with that?
For iPhone application, you need to have Mac operating system to build iOS application on any.
Good question.
Okay, thanks, ma'am.
So I'll catch you later after 10 minutes.
Rashid Khattal.
Mohammed Mara.
Hey, how are you guys, man?
Do you have any questions?
Yes, I have a question.
Yes.
Why have we downloaded Git?
So basically, we have downloaded Git. If we see the documentation as well of Flutter documentation, official documentation, so Git is just a requirement. Um, Tools Flutter depends on these tools being available in your environment. Flutter only depend on these tools. Flutter PowerShell. We never used Windows PowerShell. We never used Windows PowerShell, but it also is a Flutter dependency. It is just a requirement, and we don't need to use it, but it's just in the requirement phases that we need to cover all these things.
Okay, thank you. And I have one other question as well, please.
Yeah.
Uh, can you just show us how to use the emulator if we don't want to connect our device?
Yeah, I have not yet downloaded the emulator. It will take
Okay.
time, but
Yes.
I can show you.
Yes.
We have opened the Android Studio here, and in the Android Studio we have tools.
Yes.
Inside the tools we have AVD Manager,
Yes.
and this is a virtual device manager basically. And we create this create virtual device. We can select any device we want to create, and we press the next button, and we can choose any of the uh, release name or versions, Oreo, Pi, anything. I'll choose this queue. It will start downloading.
Can you please share the screen as well?
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Okay, so to start downloading, it says 1.1 GB, so it will take time to download it. Let me show you again the steps. We have opened our Android Studio, and in the Android Studio we have tools, and in the tools we have this AVD Manager, Android Virtual Device Manager. And in the Android Virtual Device Manager, we create a virtual device here, and we can select any device, and we can select any of these as well. I select this queue, and it will start downloading. Once it is downloaded, you will see your emulator, and then you can hit this play button. But make sure that but that the device is connected over here. Your emulator name is showing up here, something like Pixel 4 or anything, whatever you have downloaded. And then you hit the play button over here, and your application will be running on the emulator.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so let's continue with this. First, let's see what hierarchy we have here. What are these folders are? So the main file, we have this main.dart, and this is inside this lib folder. If I show you through Explorer, this is the first app. In the first app, we have this lib folder, and inside this lib folder, we have main.dart file. And inside this main.dart file, we have our all the code here. We can create other Dart files as well, and we can connect and navigate through it through different screens. We will do this in another class. And we have this separate Android folder and separate iOS folder. We don't need to change these things, but we have in the inside this Android folder we have a source folder, app folder, and inside the app folder we have this main, and we have Java and Kotlin. We can change these, but we don't require to change this for now. And we also have this pubspec YAML file. Inside of this pubspec YAML file, here we have this pubspec YAML file, and inside this pubspec YAML file, we declare all our libraries that we need to include in this. And how do we know which library is for what purpose? We can simply Flutter plugins, Flutter plugin, download packages and plugins. Not this one, Flutter libraries. Here we have all the packages, and we can read through all these packages and what these packages do. Image picker, we can see the version, what currently version of this image picker library we have, and we can see the support of Android and what changes we need to do in the Android specific folder. We can read through this, and we can see all the versions available here. We have read the null safety as well. This supports null safety. There's an example given how to use this. We will go through this. We will learn how to use this. And here's the installation instruction as well, which says you can install this Flutter pub add image picker, or we can simply just write the name of this inside under the dependencies. We can copy this, and inside the dependencies we can paste this, and if we control S or save this by pressing Control S on our keyboard, it will automatically start downloading it. Flutter pub get running. If it does not start downloading over here, so what we can do is we can run this following command in the terminal. And how do we open our terminal? So what we can do is press Ctrl J, and here we have this terminal option, and and we can type here, and we can here type as well pubcat flutter pub add image picker. We can copy this, and we can paste it. It will also start downloading. It says it's already exists, as we have already downloaded this. And then when we need to use this in main.dart file, what we can do is we can copy this, import, and we can paste this in our main.dart file, which is under the lib folder. This main.dart file, this is already imported material designs. We can paste it here, and we can hit the Control S again. Now this shows the blue line which says it is never being used, unused import, but that's fine. For the null safety, if we want to use null safety, for example, if we assign integer counter null, it will show you the error. It cannot be assigned to a null because it is null. And we have learned that Flutter supports null safety. It shows error on the compile time if it is null. But still, if we want to use this null, in any case, what we can do is uh, after this integer int, we can say question mark, and this is the error is gone. Don't explicitly initialize. It is still the blue line, but the error is gone actually, and we can assign the null. This basically question mark says that we want to assign null. We have some case that we need to assign null, but it is not good approach, so we don't use it normally. And if we start with this is the class. We have class homepage, and we have the class here, class homepage stateful widget, and this class calls to our state homepage this class. We have initialized it through our create state method. Create state is the overridden method. Now what is overridden methods or override function do? Override function means that the class that we are extending, the class we are extending already have this function in it. Override is basically the concept of two similar functions, or we are overriding the properties of the function that the stateful widget class already have. The stateful widget class already have this function, and we are overriding it, or we are using this in our own class, which is my home page. So that's why we have used this override here, and we have this create state function, and we are calling this homepage class with it. We will go through with this code in later videos, in later classes, but just giving you a idea of what these actually things are doing. And if we see, this is the built-in overridden method, again a build method, which returns one object, that is a scaffold object. We will go through this as well, but this basically returns the UI element. Each and every UI is built through this. This all is the main UI element, and inside of this main UI element we have app bar, we have body and child. So this is the widget hierarchy or widget tree that we have discussed earlier. And this is the text we see on our emulator or on devices, and this is the counter that we have updated. This is the action, floating action button, and on pressed, this calls this increment counter, which we have created a function. The function that is already being created, this one. And the set state basically updates our state. Without this set state, our state will not update, which means the counter will never update. And we have added this icons as well. In the pubspec YAML file, if we want to create, if we want to add more images or fonts or styling anything, so we can add this by here in the assets. We can uncomment this by pressing Control and /, and we can add our images here with the name images. We can create our folder. We can create our folder here. Here we can create a folder with the name of image, and then we can place our images that we want to use in our application, and then we need to declare over here our images and under the assets. But since we don't have right now images, so we just comment it back. And if we are using some fonts or some different kind of styling, we need to change the font, so we will use here the font, Control, again the /, and this is the font family we want to use, or we can use our external font as well by downloading the fonts and again creating a new folder and placing those fonts in that folder, and placing the and declaring the fonts over here in the pubspec YAML file. This pubspec YAML file is very important. We declare all our functions and methods in this pubspec YAML files. Uh, Not the functions or methods, just the packages names, and then those packages are imported into the main.dart file. As we have seen here, we import our packages here, and then we can use the functions and methods which the library provides, the built-in functions. This is the Android and iOS folder. This is the build folder, and this build folder is rebuilt every time we build the application. We delete the application or we rebuild the application. This build folder is again and again built. If we at any point we need to clear this build folder and clear our application, we can say flutter clean. This is the command to clear build folder or rebuild the folder. Just say deleting build, and you can see that once we hit this, our build folder is deleted, and every other dependencies are also deleted. That's why it shows error that it does not exist. We need to flutter pubcat. We need to download this, or either we can also write again the command flutter build. Flutter build APK. Now this will remove all the errors. This will create the application APK in our one of our folder inside the Android app. In the outputs folder, we have one outputs folder. It will create. It's not yet created. It's not yet created. We have a output folder inside the Android folder, and in that folder we have the application. We can also copy paste that APK file, or copy paste that APK file in our phone and then install it manually. For the iOS file, or for the iOS application, we need to have a Mac operating system. But since we are using Windows, we cannot build an iOS application. But if we want to build iOS application, we need to have a Mac operating system. But we don't need to recode everything or anything. We just have the code. We can always just hit this Flutter run or Flutter build application for iOS. If you have any questions, you can ask me, or either you can write in the chat box. We can look through the documentation of Mac operating system as well and Linux. This is the system requirement. We still need to install Git as well. This is the Flutter SDK. The same steps are there. Flutter Doctor. We need to create. We need to check if everything is working fine or not. It also says that if Flutter SDK is missing, we need to download it from this website. Or you can also find it here where the Flutter SDK is installed. It will not show up right now because it is installing. But you can always find it through Android Studio as well if the Flutter SDK is installed or not. This is the way to install Flutter repository from Git and updating your path variable. Okay, in a Mac operating system, we update our path variable through command prompt or um, command shell terminal. Install Xcode. We have already installed the Visual Studio Code. Deploy iOS application. We can also run the application one other way through command prompt as well. We can operate. We can open up our command prompt here. And we can just hit the Flutter run. By navigating into our project directory, project folders, and then we can type in Flutter run. Building with sound null safety, which means there is no null errors, and this is there is no compilation null errors basically. So therefore, it is downloading building with sound null safety. We can also run this application on Chrome or any of the web browser, as we have discussed that it's not only Android and iOS, we can also build web applications as well. Let's just kill this Control C to terminate this process. Let's just build this in Chrome. Waiting for connection from debug service on Chrome. The same application that we have seen in our real device, it is also visible same way on the Chrome or any other browser you are using. Okay, so this is being the same application, and if we hit this increment button or floating action button, it will counter +2. I think we have not changed it to +1 yet. It's +2, yes. And if we change it to +3, and before hitting the save button, we see the counter is 6, and we have said that it will, if we hot reload this, the state will remain the same, which means the 6 will remain there, and +3 will be 9. So Control S, get hot restarted. We can say again Control S, hot restarted. 2, 4, 6, and changing back to 3, and hot reload. It is changing again 3, 6, 9. It is hot restarted, so that's why it turns into 0 again. It initializes the state again, and then we have incremented the counter on the increment and counter function, which we have called through this floating action button. So this is it. This was the first session, first class. We have covered few theory sessions, theory things that we know how to, what is exactly Flutter and Dart, and what they are two different things, architecture and widgets, about widgets, and how Flutter is different from React Native, and how we install Flutter. We can install emulator, and we can build our applications. We have created our first project. We have understand some concepts of hot reloading restart, and we have also understand the null safety concept. In the next lecture, we will cover the list view, and how we will cover more in detail how we can build these classes from scratch. We will cover the stateful widget and stateful and stateless widgets, what are the differences between these widgets, and how we can create our own application from scratch, because this is the code that we get when we first create the application. But what if we want to create this whole application from ourselves? So we will cover these things, and we will make a small project, and in the upcoming classes we will make some different projects, some small different projects, so you will get the whole idea of where to use some elements, some widgets, or some functions, and how to use it, and you will get all through theory and practical as well. So if you have any further questions, you can ask me. I'm available. And you can also ask me questions on the WhatsApp group. And I'll share you all the slides and everything, every code content as well, through that group. Thank you, Sadia. Thank you, Sarah. Yes, I will share the slides as well.
Lina, I want to ask one thing.
Yes.
Uh, Whether we need to download everything which you have done in this session, or we will start again uh, with everything from the next session.
No, you need to download everything what I have told you as per the documentation. And I've shown you the Android Studio and Get and Flutter SDK. You have to download it and you have to practice it. So so in the next class, you might know that how we can run a simple Flutter application.
Okay, thank you.
I'll also give you assignments in the next classes. Flutter uses Dart only.
Okay, Lena, I think there are no further questions from the audience. So I think the session is over now.
Okay. Uh, okay, fine. We can
So,
continue.
okay, I am uh, asking everyone to leave. Thank you so much, Lena.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.